Film. Welcome to Conversations with Deborah, a bi-coastal dialogue with myself, Malcolm Berman, and Deborah Manning, heard exclusively on MalcolmPresents.com. I keep on wanting to say Malcolm Digital because that's what it was before it was Malcolm Presents.
But good afternoon. How are you, Malcolm?
I'm fine. And yourself?
I'm very good. I have two co-hosts here. As you can see, Miss Gracie is over here. She's watching the bird feeder, and she needs to make sure that she's right on top of all those birds. And then, of course, we have Max, who you really can't particularly see because, once again, black on black. I'll tell you, I can't see him, but he's right there. He is. They are both my co-hosts here at this point.
Okay, I mean, that's fine with me.
So how are you? What's up? What's up today?
Well, actually, it's what we talked about before we opened the show. I wanted to talk about. It's an editorial. It's called Extreme Warning Signs. But you were talking about the weather, in your part of the world. Now, you say a fish is now watering the chickens, your hens?
Yeah, well, it's always hot back here in South Carolina. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you can't pretend this. And so when it gets to be about 95 to 97, we have a weather station that alerts us. And then, of course, with the humidity, you'll end up going up well over 100 degrees, 102, 105. Well, of course, we have chickens. We love the hens. We have fresh eggs and what have you. But can you imagine being in 100+ weather with a parka, a down parka on? Well, these hens, of course, have a natural down parka. So we make sure that they have air conditioning inside the coop. But when they're in the run, we do end, and I know this sounds crazy, but we do end up sprinkling them with cold water. And it's very funny because at first they hated it. And now a whole group of them are now running back and forth like children, getting nice and cool. And I'm glad to be able to do it because as I said, with the combined weather and the feels like temperature, we're well over 100 degrees. And that's one of the reasons that I didn't get a chance to talk with you earlier today. We normally have kind of an early morning phone call to see what we're going to talk about. But we were out early to make sure that all of our garden chores needed to be done, needed to trim down a little bit on the peach tree. We got our second big haul of peaches here and our little peach tree. And then making sure the roses are fine and along with the hydrangeas and what have you. So we have a very small a bit of property back here, but it's ours. We call it the compound. Sounds like we're the dynasty or something, but it's ours. So that's what's most important.
Yeah, that's where I live, in a place called Horsehide Estates. Actually, it's about 10 acres. It's nice, but I always call it I'm going back to the estates.
There you go.
I'm totally pretentious, but
there you go.
Oh, by the way, if you didn't water the hens, would they lay hard-boiled eggs?
That's very cute. They still are laying a dozen eggs a day, which is fabulous. And that way we can go ahead and we sell the eggs to some of our clients. And then when we have extras, we end up giving them away to some of the neighbors that are here that are a little less moneyed and what have you. Not that we charge an arm and a leg for these eggs, but they're sure good. They're certainly different than store-bought eggs, I must say.
Yeah. Anyway, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, there was an editorial in the LA Times, and I think
should I be holding on? Because
I don't think you'll disagree. I mean, we'll talk about it after, but I'm going to read the whole thing, but because it is very pertinent, but it also has to do with the weather in South Carolina.
All righty.
And it's called Extreme Warning Signs. The summer isn't halfway through, and it's already proven to be a season of deadly extremes. In a little over a month, 4 major heat waves have broiled the western United States, including record-shattering triple-digit temperatures in Oregon and Washington that caused hundreds of heat-related deaths. Wildfires are again tearing through the West, burning hundreds of thousands of acres in California, Oregon, and British Columbia in Canada. The fires are so massive that smoke has traveled all the way to the East Coast, prompting health warnings in Connecticut and Maryland and turning skies above New York City hazy and red. And from Germany to China, extreme flooding has caused death and destruction. At least 180 people in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands were killed last week when 2 months worth of rain fell in 2 days, causing floods and mudslides. In the central Chinese province of Henan, at least 33 people died after riders were trapped in subways amid catastrophic flooding after torrential rains. These terrifying scenes from across the globe have long been predicted by scientists studying our warming planet. Higher temperatures would lead to more heat waves and droughts in some areas that would fuel bigger, more frequent wildfires. In other areas, the warmer climate would trap moisture in the atmosphere, leading to heavier rainfall during storms. Climate change is making normal weather events, heat waves, droughts, rainstorms, and hurricanes, much more extreme and more devastating to communities unprepared for the onslaught. What's most frightening, however, is that extremes are happening faster than many predicted or wished. It is clear that the world is running out of time to slow the devastation. The impacts of climate change are undeniable. So why are the world's developed countries still slow-walking efforts to wean their economies of fossil fuels and slash the greenhouse gases responsible for climate change? Last year, the United Nations warned that the world's need to triple promised reductions in carbon emissions to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius to prevent dire consequences, including famine and widespread flooding. But according to another UN report, instead of cutting fossil fuels production, countries were planning to increase production. Few corners of the United States have been spared the impacts of extreme weather, yet members of the Congress are still squabbling over funding for clean energy projects and reducing the nation's dependence on fossil fuels. President Biden has proposed an expansion of funding and programs to curtail oil and gas production, promote zero-emission vehicles, and invest in renewable energy. But Biden needs a cognizant, cooperating Congress to make these long-term shifts a public policy. The European Union and China have also proposed sweeping plans to curtail emissions. The EU is considering legislation to phase out gas and diesel cars and impose tariffs on imports from polluting countries. China announced plans for a cap and trade-like system for high polluting companies in their country. But there is no guarantee that these proposals will come to fruition or quickly deliver emissions. As the last few weeks were shown, there is no time to waste. The summer has already given a terrible glimpse of the future if we do not change course now. Okay, now you can comment.
Well, I do find it interesting that the United States seems to be the only country that's really taking climate change seriously. And as much as you say that we're not, we are. The dramatic decrease we've had in CO2 emissions, I don't have the statistics in front of me because I didn't realize we'd be talking about this, but it's dramatic as to how much we have reduced the CO2 emissions, which are key to all of this. The problem is that the United States is a very, very, very small part of this problem. You're looking at China, you're looking at India, you're looking at Africa, you're looking at the entire rest of the world. And for the United States to hamstring itself, I mean, I am a little bit astounded and I don't understand why, for example, Russia is allowed to complete their oil, the Nord Stream pipeline into Germany, and we've been stopped in terms of any type of oil development, what have you. Now, you and I agree that there is something that's going on. I don't know how long this is, going to go on. I don't know if it's a short-term situation, but I do agree that something needs to be done. But the problem is that we're giving passes to places like China and India and the rest of the world.
Wait, time out.
Hamstringing us.
The article said the European Union and China have also proposed sweeping plans to curtail emissions. The EU is considering legislation to phase out gasoline and diesel cars and impose tariffs on the imports from polluting countries. China announced plans for a cap and trade-like system for high polluting companies in the country. companies would ratchet down emissions over time. Now, the question whether they're going to fulfill that or not is questionable. But I think the other countries are seeing the effects of global warming, because
That's fine, and I agree with you. But the problem is you cannot continue to have the United States play the primary role to all of this, when in fact China, India, the rest of the world is proposing all of these things, but is doing nothing about it. As I say, I don't have the statistics here in front of me, but apparently because we went to natural gas, the unbelievable reduction in CO2 emissions has been astronomical. Now, you talk about the wildfire situation. Part of that wildfire situation, when I was a news reporter down in Los Angeles, was because California decided that it did not want to do forest management. And as a result, you also have PG&E, who has now finally decided, instead of going ahead and having aerial power lines, they're not going to bury the power lines. Well, what a concept that is, all right? Because in many cases, it was because of sparks from those transmission lines that started these horrendous fires. And then capitalized on top of that, you had underbrush that had not been cleared for decades. I remember when I was a news reporter in LA, I remember when they decided to talk to the ecologists. And once again, I'm very much into ecology and what have you, but you've got to trim out, like we trim our gardens here. We make sure that all of the detritus is out from underneath the roses, out from underneath all the hyacinths and all of that. You've got to start doing that. But in fact, it has, we actually are getting smoke here. In fact, we normally would have bright blue sunshine here. And guess what? I feel like I'm back in LA again. We're getting smoke. I can't literally, we were out this morning and I got to the point where I couldn't breathe any longer. So I had to come in, and of course we put on our air purifiers and what have you, and I'll stay here the rest of the day. But we're getting smoke from those fires, and it's
well, it's interesting because in LA, where I am in Sherman Oaks, we're not getting smoke from the fires. I think
we are.
The wind is blowing to the east. But,
yep.
But the point being that other countries are now, I think, finally acknowledging the climate change. But basically, the U.S. has to be the leader.
We don't have to be the leader,
yes,
Malcolm. We're always the leader. You know what? I think that somebody needs to take some, excuse the language, some goddamn responsibility, and we need to go ahead, and because China is one of the biggest polluters, they need to finally fess up at this point right now.
Right, but people are always looking for leaders. Whether it's groups, whether it's nations, there are people who step in and you follow them, and they do it by example. And the U.S. has to do that and has to negotiate. Otherwise, we're all going to die.
Well, I understand that, but the problem is we've got to put some pressure on China, which at this point, right?
Okay, but we can't say they're not doing it. Russia's not doing, so therefore we shouldn't do it.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that pressure needs to be put on these particular countries. We have done a tremendous amount here, but a lot needs to be done in those countries.
Did you ever
and not give them passes?
Did you ever see the old movie with Michael Rene, the Day the World Stood Still?
Go ahead. Yes.
Have you seen that one?
Yeah, and did you see the Planet of the Apes, where at the very last scene there was the buried Statue of Liberty?
No, but the point is, I almost the last part of the it's for those who haven't watched it, it's a rocket ship that comes from foreign planet and lands in I think it's New York City, no, Washington.
Okay.
And an alien comes out who actually looks like us. And anyway, and he wants to meet all the people from all the world organizations, the leaders of each country. Of course, they don't let him do it. But anyway, at the end, he gets they don't believe him. And he said, well, I'll give you an example. And I think one time he said, okay, at like 11 a.m. on Tuesday, all clocks stopped, all machinery stopped. And he had the power to do that. And so they gave him the audience. And basically what he said, we always looked at your planet, and we're laughing at and making fun, how you guys fought each other. He said, but now you're coming into outer space, And we cannot have that. We cannot have a hostile planet invading outer space. And if you don't find a way, to monitor yourself, we're going to destroy your planet.
Well, I think we're doing a pretty good job right now.
And that's what's happening. And and as I said, I have another show called The Many Shades of Green,
Mhm.
and we were talking about it. And what I am so pissed off at is all these politicians say, well, it's going to cost so much money. We have to do this and we have to do that. It's going to cost a lot of money, to reorganize it, to become less dependent on fossil fuel. What they're not taking into event, how much are the forest fires costing us? How much are the hurricanes costing us? The new powerful hurricanes, the tornadoes that are coming, that people say, well, you always said there hasn't been so many tornadoes. You're like in Tornado Alley now.
No. We're perfectly fine. But the problem that I have is I do not want to have the United States be the only player in this game.
Well, they can't be the only player, because if we're the only player, it's not going to work.
Well, we've been played at this point right now by China and by India and by Africa. They're not
Again, we have to tell them, and we do tell them, we cannot be the only player. I mean, if we're the only player, we're going to destroy ourselves. And I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take to have, like that George Floyd, epiphany, where people are going to say, hey, this is all screwed up. Look, and again, it's the beginning of the fire season. What's going to happen? I have no idea what's going to happen in August. And we've had, and throughout the country, as I say, that in Canada, it's like 100 degrees in British Columbia, unheard of.
I think what will finally happen is that people like you and me and ordinary people will say, okay, we need to do something, but I'm hoping that it's not going to be as drastic, because, for example, my family cannot afford an electric vehicle. I mean, when you have electric vehicles priced at $80,000, that's almost the cost of our home here. I can't afford that. What happens? I have to go into mass transit. I have to walk. I have to bicycle. I mean, the problem at this point right now is that we're looking at drastic changes that are not going to impact the very wealthy. They're going to impact people like you and me. And the you and me's of the world need to have a break. And I have to tell you, that's one of the reasons that we moved to South Carolina. We couldn't afford any longer to stay in California. I'm a native of California, but I couldn't afford to stay there any longer.
But let's put it like this. If you're the super rich, nothing affects you. The only thing that can affect you is maybe the virus or maybe germs. As far as economically, if you can afford $200,000 to take a 10-minute ride up into space.
I know.
I think it was something like if Jeff Bezos gave all of his workers $170,000 a year, he'd reduce his wealth from $70 million to $70 billion to $50 billion.
Well, I don't begrudge.
Big deal.
And I did watch the news conference. I was very heartened. I felt as though he showed a human side to himself after the jump into space. I thought that was fascinating. The only problem that I had was $100 million going to Van Jones, who is an avowed racist who hates white people, and he can use that $100 million any way he wants to. And then a celebrity chef, I believe. I would have liked to have seen it go to something perhaps more mainstream, something that perhaps would have maybe given to some farmers, maybe in the Midwest, something along those lines. But once again, the politicization of all of this is just it's really starting to worry me. And I know that here in South Carolina, people are getting fed up with all of the politics that are going on. For example, you take the Olympics. The Olympics opened last night. I don't know that they had a very big audience last night watching it, because the fear at this point is that many of our athletes, our own US athletes, are going to take a knee they're representing the country and they're going to take a knee to protest whatever political bent they want to go ahead and do. So a lot of people here have just said, I'm not watching the Olympics any longer. And for example, the All-Star game, the All-Star game that was moved out of Atlanta because of the supposed voting situation in Atlanta, Georgia, and moved to mostly white Colorado, you realize that they normally would have 30 million people watching that. 30 million people. Do you know how many people they ended up having this last time?
I have no idea.
3 million people. 3 million people from 30 million. So people at this point are getting fed up.
The question is, where was it broadcast?
Where was it broadcast?
Yeah,
what do you mean?
What station had it? I think it was cable.
I believe it was NBC. I
Was
think
it
it was
NBC or ESPN?
Could have been ESPN. It was one of the major
Well,
channels.
ESPN. Well, the problem is ESPN is not an NBC. It doesn't have the audience. People have to pay for that station.
Well, I do know that it was with a major station, but once again, we didn't watch it because at that point right now, I mean, this whole situation about being upset about Georgia voting laws, it's crazy. All that Georgia wanted was to have voter ID.
Okay.
That's all I want.
I don't want to get into that now because I think there's so many, variations of that and what the truth is. I'm not even sure what the truth is. I know it's not that's all what they wanted to do. I mean, it's in effect what they're doing is not valid identification, but they're the minority groups, not only Latinos, but the blacks, where the voting is and what they can do and how people the voting patterns, and they're trying to get it back into the last century, and not even 19th.
I think bottom line, most people want to have people identifying themselves. I would love to go back to a single day. You might keep the polls open 24 hours, but to a single day that we all vote, that we have the day off. We make
the day off is important because people.
I think a national holiday for elections, for heaven's sake. I don't understand what the problem is. We have all kinds of days off for everything else. Why don't we have a day off for the election? So I'd like to do that. And if you have absentee ballots, I simply want to make sure that whoever is voting absentee, there's a reason for it. I mean, for example, our next door neighbor, we drove him to the polls because although we couldn't get an absentee ballot, we said, fine, you have transportation problems, we'll go ahead and take it.
Or if there's what happened the last election, if we in the midst of a pandemic, which we were, which hopefully we're not going to be in the midst of pandemic the next election, even the midterm election.
With any luck, although I have to say, let's go on to the next topic, which is the Delta variant. Apparently, I stand corrected. The Delta variant is apparently ravaging a number of Democratic states and Democratic cities, and
like Florida, Texas, and Missouri are the three top.
No, you've got a real serious problem in California, and of course, one of the issues that I'm a little bit curious about. I don't understand why we do have open borders at this point now. We got 186,000 new people in through the border last month. None of these people are being checked for COVID. And at this point right now, they are being loaded onto airplanes and they're being deposited in various places around the state. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do think it's very interesting how the Delta virus managed to kickstart here. So did we have a super spreader event because we opened up the borders? We're not checking these individuals that are coming across, and many of them at this point do have COVID, and they are being shuttled to various places in the country.
Well, like when you say an open border, you almost say it's the U.S. is.
It is. I mean, for heaven's sakes,
basically what they do. Basically what they're doing is they're coming in illegally. It's
we have an open border.
No, we don't. We don't have an open border. They're coming illegally, and when they get picked up, they're being arrested.
And they're being let go.
They're being let go, but they're being. But the question is, it's something that we have to have a control for. The control wasn't what it was in the previous administration. It's like taking people who come over and putting them, instead of making it our problem, we're making it Mexico's problem, but the people could die. I mean, they
Well,
could.
my question is, because I know you're a Democrat, what is the benefit for America to have the current border policy the way it is? What is the benefit to America?
Well, the benefit to America is to find out, what does America stand for? Is it the land of the
No, 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 no.
free?
I mean, I want an actual benefit to you and me. We're middle class people. What is the benefit for the two of us to be able to have people who at this point right now are carrying COVID, and they're coming across the border,
Well, yeah,
and they're not controlled. We don't know who they are.
yeah, but that's saying, coming across the border, they're all, majority of them are criminals. They're
I'm not
rapists.
saying
They're
anything.
rapists. They have drugs. A
No,
majority of the people who are coming over. I mean, COVID is another story that's a story unto itself. But the majority of people who are coming over, walking past, came from Central America, and did days and hundreds of miles walking through dangerous territories where people would rob them or rape them, to come to
good. And what
America
is the
because they.
benefit? And what is the benefit for America? Why is Joe Biden, President Biden, allowing all of these people to come in? What is the end goal?
He's not allowing, but he hasn't come up with they haven't come up with a policy to stop them.
Why not?
But
Why not?
because the policy is it's not his policy in 6 months. The policy is not to build walls and let people die in the other countries.
He has been the president for 6 months. They're starting to lose me as an independent voter. They're starting to lose me. I don't understand what the benefit is to have all of these people come in. I don't get it. What is it for?
But the question is, I don't think there's a benefit. The question is, they don't know what to do about it. That I agree with you. He hasn't done anything about it. The only thing that I agree with him since they're relocating the three countries in Central America: El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And what they're doing is they put a lot of the people in the government on lists that they are corrupt or criminals, and they're not giving the money, their foreign aid, to the government, but giving them to people that have programs to help the people. Because in fact, El Salvador, the Bukele, who's been very good, but basically he said, I want to keep the people here. I don't want the people going. I don't want to lose population and people going to America. We want to build up jobs. We want to build up safety. We want to make the streets safe. So that's what they give money to, and that's a policy. But it's not an overnight thing. You can't just say, okay, we're going to do it and it's done. That's the policy. I don't think there's question is, I don't think there's any benefit per se to the people.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
But the question is, what do we do with people who are desperate? I don't know the answer.
My dear, all of us are going to be desperate pretty soon.
No, but we're not desperate now. We're not desperate. You don't think?
Just wait. Have you been to the grocery store lately? Have you looked at the inflation levels? Your gasoline, we're now cresting over $3 a gallon.
Well, we're up to about $5 in California. But
so that's been in less than 6 months.
But are you worried about going out in the street and being shot? Or did someone come over to your house and say, unless you pay protection money, we're going to kill your chickens?
Well, I certainly hope that's not what's going to happen.
Well, that's what's happening in these, especially in Central America. And then that's only in our part of the world. What's happening with Afghanistan?
It's also coming to places like New York. It's coming to places like Detroit. It's coming to places like Los Angeles. I mean, to decriminalize, you can see it in Granada Hills. You saw the latest video where people walked into TJ Maxx and just took tons of clothing and just strolled out.
I agree with you. We're living in perilous times, and there has to be something, and nothing actually is being done. And I agree with you, but nothing was being done before.
Well, bottom line is that the Democrats are in power, and
I mean that's bold. The Democrat is not in power. They cannot do anything in the Senate. In the Senate, they have
even locally.
They have locally in most of the states. It's red states.
Don't you have a gentleman in Los Angeles, and your head law enforcement guy that apparently wants to get rid of cash bail and is
Well, I agree with that personally. If you take a look at people, yeah, it's not for felonies, it's for smaller crimes, but
oh, like shoplifting.
like shoplifting, yeah.
You know, the problem at this point right now is I think we've gone to the other side of the pendulum, and I just that this type of lawlessness is what you see in El Salvador, for crying out loud. This is the type of stuff that you see in third world countries. People walking in and taking handfuls of clothes and merchandise out of a department store. Come on.
Again, you're doing picayune things of picking
It's
this
not
and
a
that.
picayune thing. People are very upset and very concerned about this because
So,
at this point right now, you're not having
what's the answer now? What you have are, poor folk who get arrested for a minor thing. Let's say in a lot of states for having marijuana just for their own possession, or for stealing $10 worth of merchandise. They go to jail.
quote unquote, poor people a pass to allow them to steal. That is classism. That is class.
No, but you put them in jail for 30 days or 60 days without a trial, and when they do go to trial,
how do you get control out of a situation, especially in LA and in San Francisco and what have you? And I'm hoping it's not going to be spreading here into South Carolina, because I have to tell you, people here will not put up with this sort of stuff. They will not.
And what will they do?
What will they do? They will protect themselves.
So they're going to go around shooting people.
No, they will protect themselves any way they need to.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I know the problems. I don't know the answers. I know what the answers are not.
But I don't understand, Malcolm. Why in the world are we allowing, quote unquote, poor people to go ahead and just ransack stores? They're ransacking, for example, in San Francisco. They're ransacking.
Well, now, I don't know. I know there's situations and I know there's stories about them, but I don't know the extent of it. Next week, come with the extent of what part of how much is being lost. With ransacking. The last time, or a few years ago, what I remember reading statistics that the loss in most major department stores or groceries was by employees who would walk out with merchandise. It wasn't.
That just turned around.
It wasn't ransacking. So I'd like to know how much of that ransacking is brought up by the media, because they're there and they can get. I mean, it's a great story for the 11 o'clock news. Oh, there, and this guy came in. It's sort of like goes with I was watching something in Toluca Lake when they had not Toluca Lake, in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
When they had the heat wave and there were people bathing in Lake Tahoe, and all of a sudden a mama bear came with her 3 cubs to bathe in the lake. They weren't interested in people. They were interested in being cool. But do you realize that our time ran out?
You're joking. Really?
I wouldn't joke. Didn't you hear beep, 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 beep?
Oh, for heaven's sakes. For heaven's sakes.
But going back to the main topic, we haven't even talked about whether people should be forced to vaccinate. Which is another topic.
This will be fast. Once again, it's like the debate as to whether people should wear seatbelts or not. I wear a seatbelt, you wear a seatbelt. And in terms of the problem at this point right now is that when you're starting to put mask mandates back into place, those of us who are vaccinated already and those of people who are not vaccinated, they say, well, what the hell? I mean, so why did I get vaccinated? Why did I get vaccinated? Why did I try an unproven vaccination? So I think that Biden has a real PR problem here, that in fact they could have changed dramatically by doing a little bit of common sense thinking to appeal to people to get the vaccination so that they would not get the Delta variant. Now, what they're doing, rather than doing a cause and effect, which is get the vaccination, you won't get the Delta variant. What they're doing is saying, well, everybody has to wear a mask. And the problem is that really pisses off people who's had the vaccination. So people like myself and my husband, we're pretty pissed off about it because I'm listening to Fauci, and I trusted Fauci before. I'm getting to a point now where I'm not trusting Fauci. And that's not good because I don't understand at this point right now, putting masks on people who have already been vaccinated. What Biden should be saying is, if you don't want the Delta variant, get vaccinated. This is what the deal is. And they need to have a grassroots level from that effort.
Well, the question is, I think, number one, that most of the people who are vaccinated, who they say put on a mask in large groups, I don't necessarily think they're the ones that are complaining. I think the ones that are complaining are the people that aren't vaccinated. Now, if you want to do something and cause it, people who are vaccinated do not have to wear a mask. People who are not vaccinated have to wear a mask. See how this goes over.
No, I agree. But the problem is then going to be, how do you prove that in fact you've been vaccinated? Now, for myself and my husband, and I don't want to be required to do this, but we keep our vaccination certificates on our person. When we go out, I've got the vaccination certificate.
Right, and of course those could be forged and
well, mine aren't forged. So.
Well, what it's going to be is it's going to be a big V on your forearm. That means vaccinated.
That or right there on my forehead.
Right,
so.
or yeah, the scarlet letter. No, it's going to be a big V and then a serial number, right?
Oh my God, please.
And then and then either a cross or a Jewish star, so it tells you which religion you are.
But the problem is
the problem is that people who are not vaccinated and have really no good reason for not being vaccinated, because it's been proven, as you took the vaccination, it's been proven in the states and the groups that are vaccinated that so far they've been, that a small minority have gotten it, but the vast majority, it's proven effective.
Mm-hmm. And the problem is, we need to have a campaign. We need to have a common sense information going out to those who are not vaccinated. Now, unfortunately, the way it's being done right now is being shoved down people's throats. And I got to tell you, most people are not going to accept it.
It's not being shoved down their throat. It's a telling what the science says. They think if the government says to be vaccinated, the government can't tell me what to do. Of course, the government can tell you what to do. They're doing it all the time.
The bottom line is when you're forcing masks back on everybody, whether you're vaccinated or not.
Right now, they're not forcing, they're suggesting. It's the CDC says in certain states, in certain things in LA County, forced to wear the mask in group situations, indoors. Mm-hmm. But and why is that caused by? It's caused by the people who didn't take the vaccine, because they're the ones, 99% of the people in the hospitals or the deaths were people that were non-vaccinated who still don't want to do the vaccinations because I don't want the government to tell me what to do.
I have to say that the government, the current administration, doesn't seem to understand the American psyche. The American psyche says that you don't want to be told what to do. You need to lead people to that. You don't force them into things because we're very independent. Americans are pretty independent.
That's a lot of bull. Our everyday life, we're forced to do things. We're forced, when we drive the car, we're forced to stop at red lights. We're forced to stop at stop signs. We're forced to have a driver's license. We're forced to have a picture ID for the driver's license.
All I'm saying is that I do believe that there could have been a better approach to this whole situation with the vaccinations. And rather than making it a mandate, you simply go ahead and you point out what the benefits obviously are.
And they've been I don't know what you've been reading in the stations you've been seeing, but
I've been reading in all of them. I'm an ex-news reporter, so I watch all of them.
But that's what they've been doing. They've been saying the benefits of it.
they've been doing. What they've been doing is vilifying those people who have decided not to take the vaccine.
Which is true. I think they, you can't force people to take a vaccine, but what you could do is saying the companies can say, okay, if you don't take the vaccine, fine, you can't come into work here because you might spread the virus to other people. There are things, there are federal places or there's public places where you could say, okay, you cannot ride the bus unless you could come up with, unless you're vaccinated. You cannot take the train, you cannot fly.
I'd like to have it said this way, that you can avoid the COVID pandemic situation and the Delta variant if you go ahead and get vaccinated. And that to, at this point right now, talk about how the vaccine was developed and how quickly it got out. I mean, to have had the vice president say that she wasn't going to take it because Trump developed it. I mean,
well, again, that's a misnomer. She said she's not. No, wait. She said she's not going to take it just because Trump said it's valid. But she waited. She said it got to be approved by the CDC. It got to be approved by the federal agencies. Not only because Trump said, "Oh, this is great. This is what I did." When it's approved. Now, the thing which I don't understand, how come I think it's the FDA has to get the final, why they're not?
Thank you.
I mean, that's, in fact, I don't know anybody on any of the radio shows, whether it be, the liberal radio shows or the conservative radio shows that said, why hasn't the FDA approved of it?
Well, apparently there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that they need to go through. There's all kinds of testing, blah, 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 blah. Bottom line is FDA needs to wake up, needs to be listening to President Biden, which is approve this sucker,
right?
Because it works,
right?
Why is he not giving an executive order for something like that to the FDA? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you can.
Of course he can.
No, I don't think you can. I don't think you can. No, because then it's not independent. Then it's not an independent group. The FDA. One of the reasons that they're the FDA and then people believe in it is they're an independent group. They cannot be, the president cannot be given an executive order that this is good.
Problem is that right now it is strangled in bureaucratic red tape and regulations.
Well, it's political. Anyway, under that note, keep the chickens cool.
I will. You too.
And tell Fish to stop being hiding from us. He doesn't want to get involved in this.
I don't know that you want him on, but
I want him on because I want to have a debate with him.
Oh,
I mean, because I think he is to the right of you.
Very much so. And so what's so funny about it is he's a Berkeley kid.
Right. But yeah, well,
more right than I am. Once again, I'm an independent voter. I am right down the middle. That's what
I hate to tell you. I know you're an independent voter, but I think you're leaning to the right side. We'll straighten you out at the end of the show. Anyway, you have a great week. Keep cool.
I will. You too. My best to Anna, your wife.
My love to Fish.
All righty.
Even though he doesn't want to do my show. Bye.
Bye-bye.